I've been playing for like 6.5 years probably. Started playing at the end of 2013.
Almost 6 years.
From October 2013.
I come back every maybe like year, 2 years, something like that. I start again from scratch every time.
Cookie Clicker at first glance appears to be an absurdly simple game. Played in your web browser, it'll begin like this with a mostly empty screen and one giant glowing cookie. If you click it, you'll receive a cookie in return. Click it 15 times and you'll be able to pay for a cursor that starts to do some of that clicking for you. That really is the chocolatey core of the experience. You click, you get cookies, and then you use those cookies to get even more cookies. After you've invested in a few cursors, for example, you'll probably want to step on up to grandmas who will bake a new cookie every single second, God bless them. Then it's cookie farms and mines, factories and banks, anything to earn more cookies. The game is designed to play itself to some extent, as you leave it ticking away in the background while you get on with your day, or at least pretend to, before eventually returning to cash in on whatever accumulated cookies have been collected clicklessly. Because of this, Cookie Clicker is sometimes referred to as being one of the forerunners in what we now call the idle game genre. Games that can just keep on going with or without your input. To some of you, that's not going to sound like a whole lot of fun, and I get where you're coming from. But at the same time, there's something in my brain that lights up at the idea of it all, that instinctively craves the next milestone, whatever that is. It's a grandma in this case, thank you. But do I enjoy playing it? I don't know. Maybe? Regardless, like a lot of people, I played this thing to death for about a week, maybe two, when it first hit the internet in 2013, before eventually tearing myself away to focus on more productive things, like getting more followers on Twitter. This is worth the anxiety. But almost 7 years later, to my surprise, there remains a community of players who never left, who never stopped playing Cookie Clicker. In fact, of the 4 people I've spoken to, each of which have been playing since around the time it first launched, all of them, all 4 told me they could imagine playing this game in some capacity for the rest of their lives. Wow, okay, I feel like I'm missing something here. What makes Cookie Clicker worthy of such devotion?
I would describe it as a really slow motion strategy game.
To most people, it's probably really boring, but the way I see it, it's about optimizing.
If you make progress in the game, it feels like you're doing something productive with your time.
Obviously, this game it doesn't have the at the end, but this feeling of accomplishing something is pretty big.
It's kind of like a really elaborate joke on what makes us feel like we're contributing.
Right, so a few different thoughts here. There seem to be 2 distinct things that are important to players. First is Cookie Clicker's sense of near endless progression. You can't beat this game, there's no final objective, no finish line. Some players will aim to unlock all of the game's achievements, of which there are many, and I'm told that even if you know the game inside out, you're looking at about a year's playtime before you finally manage that. But even if you do, the game is still being updated. Not frequently, but about once a year or so, Cookie Clicker's endgame is extended with a new building being introduced, or maybe a new minigame, and with both of those things, there are more achievements to unlock. Every time you get close to those goalposts, they just shift a bit further away. Today's Cookie Clicker might look similar to the one I played in 2013, but things have evolved. Even narratively, the game goes some places you might not expect, as your thirst for cookie production has you eventually triggering an event known as the Grandma Apocalypse, in which your overworked labour force of kind elderly women begins to mutate as you push their bodies and their minds beyond anything that can still be described as human. This sounds bad, and it is, but like absolutely everything in Cookie Clicker, even an apocalypse, if used correctly, will actually lead to more cookies being created. Progress is inevitable. Eventually, you'll ascend, which lets you start the game from scratch, but each time you do this, you'll be adding more and more permanent upgrades to your bakery, which sees your cookie production grow exponentially. What might have taken you days in your first run will now take just minutes as your CPS, or cookies per second, flies up into the millions, billions, and beyond. And all the while, the game is steadily introducing more and more systems to tinker with. You'll gain access to a grimoire of spells to cast, decide which gods to worship in your pantheon, hatch a dragon and sacrifice buildings to it, control the seasons, tend a garden, birth your own Santa Claus, carefully manage your milk and sugar lump supplies, and if you're playing Cookie Clicker pretty actively, you'll want to be clicking on as many of these golden cookies that show up as possible, as they'll lead to huge combos in which your production is multiplied in such a way that weeks, maybe months worth of cookies are being produced in just a few short minutes. There is a lot to keep track of. Cookie Clicker then is a playground of optimization, a triumphant dance of interlocking systems and modifiers that, when manipulated correctly, can all work in unison towards just one single goal. And I think there's some beauty to be found in there somewhere. I get it, I do, sort of. But we're not talking about players diving into this for just a couple of hours, days, or even weeks. This is a community that's talking about maybe playing this game forever. That is the bit that I'm still struggling with, and so I got in touch with the game's original creator, Julian Theonot, better known as Ortail, to see if he knew what was going on with his video game.
So I made the game in like maybe 4 hours in one night, with really shabby pixel art and a couple of pictures I grabbed from Google Images.
So you didn't expect people to have fun when they played it to begin with?
Oh yeah, I thought they would have fun, like ironically, like, oh, that's pretty absurd, that's funny, I'm gonna play this for like maybe 20 minutes and then forget about it.
I asked Ortail why he thought players still stuck around with Cookie Clicker after 6-7 years, and he told me that's a question he doesn't always know how to answer either.
There's a lot that's accidental about the game, I guess, and like I'm very proud of what I've accomplished with it. But I'm also mostly just thankful, and I feel very lucky about it. Like sometimes I just add like a little feature or something, and people see it as something really funny or really interesting, or they use it as a kind of gameplay lever to abuse the game and exploit it in ways that I never planned for. It's very fascinating to see that happen.
Ortail offered that maybe there's a comparison to be made with games like Animal Crossing, in which a lot of the time the things you do in this game can be quite repetitive, and sometimes you'll need to wait and come back later to see the fruits of your labor. And I get that comparison, I do, but it just isn't entirely satisfying to me. Cookie Clicker and idle games more generally seem different somehow. They clearly share a number of traits with other types of video games, but also, look at it, look how different an experience this appears to be. And so I decided to make one more call, this time with Jessica Hammer, an assistant professor at the Human-Computer Interaction Institute. She's been involved in some of the very first academic work on the topic of idle and incremental games and how they've evolved over the last decade.
I am impressed with the dedication of players who have stuck with Cookie Clicker for 6 or 7 years, but it's not surprising to me.
Okay, so I asked her how she and her team describe the appeal of games like this one.
The phrase we use to talk about them is playing by not playing, or playing at planning. So the pleasure of anticipating and the pleasure of thinking about the next move you're going to make is what carries you from one in-game interaction to the next.
Jessica suggested a really interesting link between the psychology of idle games and how we think about vacations or holidays. She pointed me towards a study conducted in 2010 which found that the anticipation of an upcoming trip may be more likely to improve our happiness than the trip itself.
Idle games draw on that same impulse that you're not playing them all the time, but you get to think about what you're going to do and plan for it. You even get to organize your schedule around it. So these are very much games about manipulating your real life in order to get the maximum pleasure that you're looking for out of the game. So if you've ever looked forward to a vacation, you can understand why somebody might enjoy an idle game.
Vacations were these things that we used to do where we'd leave the house to go somewhere else, maybe even another country, for fun. Obviously we don't do that anymore, so instead I like to stand out on this little balcony to remember what it's like to be outside. It's nice. Alright, so do we have an answer to that original question? Why does Cookie Clicker attract such a dedicated player base? Well, we've heard a few different things. The pleasure of anticipation, that's surely a big part of it, or the idea of playing by not playing, as Jessica might describe it. Then there's the sheer amount of depth that this strange looking thing offers to players. Even compared to other idle games, Cookie Clicker just seems to be on a whole different level with that stuff, and that's partly down to the fact that it still continues to be updated. 7 years down the line, Ortail is still working on this game, still adding to it. And I guess that brings players back, and those players have formed a community where together they work out this game's many intricacies and how best to use them. That's important too. To be honest, I think the thing that I've grappled with the most as I try to make sense of all this is that it started out as a joke. Cookie Clicker wasn't meant to have a point, it wasn't even meant to be fun, but somehow, and to begin with, certainly unintentionally, it became irresistible to those that truly clicked with it. You could even count Autel himself in that number. This was an evening's work meant to poke fun at the absurdity of acquiring something just for the sake of it, and yet it's changed his life more than anyone else's. Perhaps in the end, I've been overthinking some of this, and maybe it is as simple as the answer one player gave to me when I asked her why she'd stuck around for as long as she had.
The most rewarding part of games is usually seeing the progress, and as long as I can see the progress in Cookie Clicker, it never actually feels pointless to me.
Maybe that's it. Progress is the point, whether that's leveling up a Witch Doctor in Diablo, or collecting fossils in Animal Crossing, or clicking a giant cookie in Cookie Clicker. It's the journey and not the destination that matters. Why do I need to ask how long that journey should take, or whether or not it will have a satisfying enough ending for the players that choose to embark on it? Oh my god, am I talking about life? Should I be enjoying this moment more than I am right now? Because I tell you what, in all honesty, I'm quite stressed. Am I focused on the wrong things? Have I been living my life wrong? I'd like to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video and hopefully for teaching me how to bake. Skillshare is a website about getting better at things that you're not very good at. Like, for example, in my case, baking. I'm going to be following a class that tries to turn these ingredients, like eggs, into actual cookies. Shout out to this class from Ashley Grumble for walking me through how to do it step by step.
Next, add your white sugar, brown sugar, and softened butter to the bowl of a stand-up mixer.
Annie, do we have a stand-up mixer? No. Anyway, if you hate baking, Skillshare also offers a range of different classes on topics like productivity, video editing, even game development. Loads of stuff. Does that butter look cream to you? I'm not sure. If you'd like to take a look at some of these classes yourself, a Skillshare membership costs less than $10 per month, but if you would like to try before you buy, the first 1,000 of you to use this link right here will receive 2 months free of charge. Right, so if I've done this correctly, I should be able to put these small balls into the oven and then they'll sort themselves out and become cookies. However, I've only really got time to try this once, so for the sake of our continued relationship with our sponsor, let's hope it works. The gloves are on. It's time to see how this has turned out. I've had a quick glance through the window, and to be honest, they are chunky boys. They're chunkier than perhaps they were meant to be in the video, but I think I might have used a bit too much dough. That's more of a Chris Pratt problem than a Skillshare problem, but you know, they look like cookies. Can you do better? Maybe that's the angle we'll go with. If so, check out Skillshare.com, the link's in the video description. Make better cookies than we did.